Oscar Piastri claims his maiden Formula One victory in a thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix, which pushed McLaren's ability to control its drivers and ensure they follow team orders to its limit. Elsewhere, Max Verstappen had anger throughout his veins, and Lewis Hamilton collected a 200th Formula One podium. From RacingNews365.com, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks, who has a stunning sunset in the background overlooking the Hungary. Ian, we've got to start with McLaren and Lando Norris, should I say, rather than Oscar Piastri, because we saw what happened in the race. Oscar Piastri made a phenomenal start, overtook Norris into the first corner, led then the bulk of the race until a decisive moment at the second round of pit stops. McLaren opting to pit Lando Norris, who was in second, first to cover off a fast-charging Lewis Hamilton. However, as we saw, Lando Norris then undercut Oscar Piastri. But when Piastri pitted, he was told by the team, "We will give you the position back." Lando didn't want to, it seemed.
Quite remarkable what unfolded, it has to be said, Nick. And hello, everyone. Warm welcome from the Hungary ring. Just to give you a quick idea, pack up going on, as you can see. Team's got to do a quick turnaround to get across to Belgium, of course. But yes, there's still going to be fallout when we get to Belgium next week. That's pretty obvious. What's strange about this whole scenario, Nick, as the way you've explained it there, are the quotes that have since emerged from Lando Norris and team principal Andrea Stella. Lando, in the post-race press conference, pretty much said that he had everything under control. He was always going to get the place back. It was just, he was looking at the possibility of doing it on the last lap into the last corner. It was explained to him, having this myriad of exchanges with his race engineer, Will Joseph, that if you decide to leave it to the last lap, what happens if there's a safety car? Oscar won't get the win. And Lando all of a sudden realised, well, yeah, hold on a second. Will Joseph, now I don't know if this is an exact quote from Will Joseph, but it's certainly paraphrasing what Lando Norris said in the press conference, that basically he was told that you could look like a bit of an idiot if you don't give up that position earlier than you're thinking of doing so on the last corner of the last lap. So regardless of everything that had gone on beforehand, and this exchange, as I say, that was going backwards and forwards, and it seemingly becoming apparent that Lando was never going to give the place back, he's turned around and said, "I was always going to do it." The pertinent point from Andrea Stella, the question I asked him straight away was, did you always have confidence and belief that Lando was going to give the place back? Yes, he said. The bottom line is that there was a team meeting, they have these team meetings, they discuss these situations, and the bottom line for Andrea Stella is there is a principle within McLaren that you are a team player. If you do not want to play the team game, you will no longer be inside McLaren. So that pretty much is the threat. There's a kind of ultimatum there. Do as you're told, be a good boy, play the team game, and you will always be a McLaren driver, effectively. And it's that really difficult scenario in Formula One, and we've seen it many times in the past, whereby Formula One is a team sport. From, we're looking at over 1,000 people inside McLaren, whereas whilst we have a Constructors' Championship, for the most part, what people always remember is the driver's champion from a particular year. And of course, Lando is in a bit of a driver's championship battle with Max Verstappen. So he would obviously been thinking about himself as an individual, but of course, he has to play the team game, because the bottom line is Formula One is a team sport at the end of the day.
And you mentioned there that Norris is somewhat in a title fight for the Drivers' Championship. That's becoming more of an effect, especially after today, and obviously a difficult race for Max Verstappen, but we'll get onto that in one moment. Going back to Lando, we've said in recent episodes of the F1 Update and obviously the Racing News 365 podcast is we want to see Lando being a bit more ruthless. it was looking like today that was going to be the day he started doing that, perhaps in the wrong way. But do you think he made the right decision following the team orders and giving Oscar what was his first victory in Formula One?
I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this point, but yes, he ultimately did make the right call for all the points that I made in my previous answer, with regard to the fact that it has to be remembered, Formula One is a team sport, regardless of the fact that you have these drivers that are going for a driver's championship, of course. He recognised that, he knows that after what happened previously, that he's got to be a bit more ruthless. As we saw in Austria, as we saw in Silverstone, of course, he's got to get this really edge to him. And I think what we saw today, yes, there was a little bit of gamesmanship going on from Lando, because he was almost testing McLaren to a certain extent. He was almost like forcing them to kind of like potentially reverse their decision. But I think we saw a little bit of, not nastiness, I'm not going to call it nastiness, but that there was something there inside Lando today that made him decide to eke this situation out over that period of the race. When, if we are to believe what he has said, in that he was always going to give the place back, I believe him. I have no doubt that that was going to be the case. Would Max Verstappen have done it if he was in that situation? Would a Lewis Hamilton, a Seb Vettel, a Michael Schumacher have done it, given similar circumstances? We can debate that until the cows come home, of course. But today, on this particular day, Lando Norris took this particular course of action because he knew, deep down, bottom line, the ructions that it would have caused and the ramifications that would have followed if he had not given that place back.
And obviously, as you see in the background, the sun for you is setting. In Australia, the sun is rising, and they're waking up to Oscar Piastri, the Australian driver, finally claiming an F1 win. A quick word on what he's done today.
Look, come.
I'm quickly going back to Lando, referring to some comments from Lando. He said he lost it off the line.
Yeah.
And basically, he had a good start, but second phase, again, as we've seen not only recently, was his nadir. That allowed Oscar the run on the inside of him into the first corner. And as I predicted, Nick, in yesterday's F1 update, Saturday evening's F1 update, we had three abreast going around turn one.
We did.
We had three abreast. I think I might have said turn three, but I'll take turn one. I'll take turn one.
So this is a rarity because your prediction came true, and so did mine, because I did say an Oscar Piastri win, if I remember correctly.
You did.
So
you did.
I think this is a first, so we probably need to
first,
screen
we're
record
both right. We're both right.
Yeah.
But so basically, just to get back to answering your question, Lando, effectively, as I say, we lost it off that line, particularly that second phase, because then obviously the trail behind Oscar through those first two stints of the race, as we saw, and that was, he knew he had lost the race effectively. So regardless of how then the pit stops unfolded and the calls that McLaren were making, and they made them to bring Lando in first, so what they thought was defending from Lewis. Lewis was a good few seconds away. They did not want what is a very powerful undercut there at the Hungara ring to take effect. But they saw it as their best opportunity, and they referred that to the drivers that we will allow Lando to come in first, then Oscar, even though arguably it should have been Oscar coming in first as the leader on the track. As I say, Lando effectively knew, and again referring to his comments, that this was not a win for his table. So he was naturally happy enough for Oscar to take the win. Where this win will sit for Oscar, because there was this little bit of consternation over that final stint, this little bit of, not ill feeling, shall we say, but this, as I say, this undercurrent is a better phrase for it, that took place, because even Oscar very late on turned around and said, if this doesn't play out, then this is going to be crucial for the team. And thankfully for him, it played out. He's got his win. It has to be said, a much-deserved win.
Yeah.
7th different winner in 13 Grand Prix now that we've had this season. And what a season it is now turning out to be after for so long appearing as if it was going to be another Max and Red Bull domination. And obviously, I'm sure now, Nick, we're going to come on to Max Verstappen because he created the other half of this story from this particular Grand Prix weekend, that's for sure.
Well, I was going to say, McLaren gave us a fascinating ending to the race. Max Verstappen gave us a thrilling Hungarian Grand Prix because obviously he made an amazing start, actually a great launch off the line, but lost out in the first corner, was the third driver of the three abreast on the outside, had to take avoiding action to avoid a collision. Obviously went off the circuit, naughtily rejoined ahead of Lando Norris in second. Of course, he didn't give the position back, so obviously it was being investigated by the stewards, and obviously that was then the end of that. However, he was angry throughout the race, it seemed, complaining about the strategy, complaining about the way drivers were racing him. He had quite a sizable collision with Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages, which he was lucky to escape from, the rear of his car going airborne. It almost looked like a vice versa image of Monza 2021. And remember what happened there at turn 2. The interesting thing about this whole thing, though, and obviously Max's anger, and he just sounded almost quite aggy in a way, is what people think of this is up to them. But he was doing a 24-hour simulator race last night, was up until 3 a.m. in the morning doing his stints for his simulator team. Obviously didn't get a normal night's sleep you'd have ahead of an F1 race. Do you think that perhaps played a part in Verstappen's, the way he kind of presented himself today? Because we've not heard Max this angsty and angry and feisty over a radio for an entire race, potentially since he first entered the sport as a teenager.
He was very, very touchy, let's put it that way. And it gave off the air of someone that, as you pointed out, didn't really have a good night's sleep. We all know what that feels like, folks. You wake up the following morning, you know you've not had a great night's sleep, you've got to bed late for whatever reason, and you've woke up feeling pretty bloody grumpy, to be honest with you, Nick. And sometimes situations then unfold throughout the course of the day, and that tetchiness, that sleeplessness kicks in, and you take it out on other people. And this felt exactly like that Max was taking out. The poor old Jean-Pierre Lambiase, his engineer, copped for most of it, it has to be said, was pretty much taking it out, whatever he was going through. Now, Christian Horner, the team principal, speaking to him post-race, he was asked a question, did this have anything to do with it, Max taking part in this sim race? Christian said, we trust Max to be sensible. We are, we're not going to stop this kind of thing because, it's what he does, it's what he loves. And we don't think it had any kind of bearing, in fairness, to in many respects. So they kind of pushed that to one side. But what Christian is not happy about was the tone of some of Max's comments over the radio, criticising the team. Now, this goes back to Saturday evening post-qualifying, when he was criticising the team, suggesting that there were certain people not really pulling their weight to some extent and purposes, to all intents and purposes. And so there were others not knowing what's quite going on within the team as to why Red Bull is all of a sudden no longer the dominant force that it was at the start of the season. Then we have these comments today, constant little barbs over the radio, going on about the performance of the car, the situations on track, and again, and race strategy as well. He wasn't happy with the way that played out. This is what you've given me. I'm now making it work to my best ability. And using a fair number of expletives along the way, punctuated within all these criticisms. He was then basically asked in the pen, what do you say to the people that are criticising you for the way you are criticising the team? And he basically just turned around and said, "Fuck them all," or something along those lines, I think it was. I think just doesn't care. And apologies, folks, for using the expletive, but I'm just repeating what Max has said. So again, showing his anger in the pen. Now, Christian, as I say, not happy with regard to this, and he has turned around and said that the discussions are going to take place with Max, but they are going to stay behind closed doors, because I got the impression from Christian that this was not what he wanted to hear from Max. Max, we've discussed about being a team player. This was not about Max being a team player here. This was about an individual criticising his team for various things that are going on. And when you think what Red Bull has given him for, let's put it this way, for over 3 years now, when we think of the way 2021 unfolded and then him winning the titles dominantly in 2022 and 2023, all those Grand Prix victories, for him to suddenly turn around and criticise the team the way he was doing, both yesterday after qualifying, Saturday after qualifying, today, Sunday after the race, during the race over the radio, I felt that was really unfair of him to start nitpicking like that.
Yeah, it was certainly a side of Max we've not seen for a very long time, at least to that extent. Yeah. And we'll talk about him, I imagine, in more detail in tomorrow's podcast. Lewis Hamilton, 200th podium in third. We kind of spoke last night that Mercedes were potentially for a tough race, given how hot it was expected to be today. But at 200th podium, Lewis Hamilton, a great result on the back of his win in the British Grand Prix. A solid day for the 7-time world champion.
Yeah, particularly as well when you consider that he really wasn't happy with that car at all. We discussed that post-qualifying, but 5th place was the best he could do with it. And then only because Sergio Perez, and in particular his teammate George Russell, were not there in the mix in Q3. Yeah, just really not happy with that car. Yet somehow, and as I mentioned in the update on Saturday, post-qualifying, that at least in the race, Lewis has been able to do really well this season compared to his one-lap qualifying performances. And again, we saw him produce a really good, strong performance in that car across all stints, even though he himself wasn't particularly happy at one stage when he felt that the first stint in particular on the new medium tyre, they perhaps didn't stretch that long enough, because that then made him go, in particular on the middle stint on the hard tyre, the first of the hard tyres, a little bit longer than he wanted to. But he held his own, twice had great battles with Max, who got within DRS range but just couldn't make a move stick. Again, Max criticising his car, not being able to turn in it. He wasn't doing what he wanted during the Grand Prix. So plenty of grumbles along the way. But yes, for Lewis, to hold off Max the way he did, and I'm sure lots of people are going to have their views on that turn one incident on lap 63 when they came together, and we've not seen that for quite some time, have we, folks? But the stewards at the end of the day deciding that neither driver, use their phraseology, and I'm sure you've heard this one before, was wholly or predominantly to blame.
Absolutely. And just very quickly go through the top 10. Oscar Piastri won the race ahead of Lando Norris, Hamilton in third, Charles Leclerc in fourth. Kind of Ferrari went under the radio a little bit today, and we'll speak about them in the podcast. Max Verstappen in fifth, Carlos Sainz sixth, Sergio Perez seventh, George Russell in eighth, Yuki Tsunoda ninth, Fernando Alonso 10th. And just to quickly round things off, because I think it's only fair, given that when he has a shocker, we criticise him. It makes sense that we end by praising Sergio Perez, because actually today was a typical Sergio Perez drive. What we know him best for doing, these amazing recovery drives after a difficult Saturday. As I've just mentioned, obviously, we know what happened yesterday with his big crash. Started, obviously, the back of the grid, but actually, an amazing recovery drive by Checo.
Yeah, let's give him some credit, because he has taken a lot of stick, not just from us on our updates and our podcasts, but pretty much universal throughout F1. So we're not the only ones that have, as I say, given him some criticism over these past few weeks, given his performances. Yeah, that was, as I say, let's doff our cap for him. Well done, Checo. You delivered under considerable pressure, let's put it that way, bearing in mind what had happened in qualifying on Saturday. Starting so far back, he knew the best that was possible would be to finish in the lower half of the points, and that's exactly what he did do. It was a solid drive. Will it be enough if he's able to repeat this kind of drive in Belgium? Obviously avoiding any qualifying mistake quite naturally, that's going to put him back down the grid again. If he's in a good position on the grid at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, then can he then translate that into a really strong point scoring position? Top 3, top 5, most definitely. That's what the team will be looking for him. Will that be enough though? We know there's going to be talks taking place post-Belgium as to whether Checo deserves to continue in that seat. So, but at least he's ticked a box today. He's just got to tick even more boxes on Saturday and Sunday in Belgium next weekend.
Absolutely. Ian, as always, amazing stuff. Get yourself home safely for the podcast on Monday. For those who are watching this video, be sure to comment below your thoughts on the Hungarian Grand Prix and any of our talking points, as well as that. Smash a like on this video, subscribe to the Racing News 365.com channel, and for myself and Ian, we'll see you later. Bye.
Take care, folks.